Okay. So let's get it back to actually the beginning of the PowerPoint here. So the SCATS fiscal year 2024-2029 Metropolitan Transportation Improvement Program and the Air Quality Conformity Determination is ready for review. And I wanted to kind of go through and remind you of what we did in the last year and a half. So we started back a year ago in May and September, and we determined our funding availability and how much money would be available for projects. Remember how long ago that was, makes a difference. We sent out October 1st, the notice of application availability, and the pre-applications were then going to be due December 1st. And so the pre-applications were completed, and we received 27 of the pre-applications, and then there were 4 additional fund requests totaling $42 million. So in December, we talked about these pre-application and kind of pared them down so that when the applications were submitted in February, there were 17 of them. They totaled 50 million. I know it was a little different, we had fewer but more money. The TAC scored these based on the criteria. If you remember, we went through both a technical score as well as the score that was the non-quantitative benefit, and added those together and came up with a map. We had some public input via interactive map. We received 100 online comments and 4 sets of written comments. We prioritized and picked the top projects for scoping. We got scoped 6 of the construction projects, and based on the scoping results, not only were the projects that were scoped updated, but some of the projects that were not scoped were also had their costs updated. ODOT did not scope the projects that were previously in the TIP. Those had been scoped previously. So projects that had follow-on years, that were in the illustrative years originally, that were scoped originally, they didn't scope those, but those projects again were updated based on the cost estimates that ODOT gave us. And then you all updated your applications. That's where things went crazy. So as remember, the costs of the inflation sort of went rampant starting in about January of that year, last year. And it became quite evident that if we were going to fund projects that were currently in the TIP, as well as projects that were previously illustrative year projects, but were now in the active years, we wouldn't have enough money. Oh, and I see I have an error here. We don't have enough money basically to fund any new projects. So they recommended adding funds to 3 existing projects and funding no new projects beyond those in the 2021-27 illustrative use list, reserving those funding to complete the existing projects. We had about $7 million left that was not programmed, and we have about $6.5 million of anticipated cost overruns in projects. So it's like no new projects. Made it a little easier to actually prepare financial constraints tables, because we really had no new projects, just the 3 projects, and then reserving the funds for projects such as Hayesville that took $2 million recently. So then we repaired the draft TIP and the AQCD. We were directed to do that. And we are right here now in March of 2023 of you recommending to the policy committee to make any changes you feel are appropriate and release the tip for public review. So then following this, we'll be out for public review. For the minimum of 30 days, it will be closer to 60 days, as required by our SCATS policy, PPP. And it'll go to the policy committee in May. Hopefully it will be adopted in May. And then once it's adopted, it'll go to the governor for signature and then to USDOT. And they should be issuing the final approval prior to the new fiscal year of October 1st. The document, it's 190 pages, is broke down. There's acknowledgements and executive summary. And chapter 1 is the introduction and the summary. It describes SCATS MPO, what a tip is. It includes historical information about projects that have been programmed since 2003, and including more detailed information about projects in the most recent tip. So it's kind of what's the status of the projects that were in the most recent tip. Chapter 2 is consistency. It describes the federal requirements for the preparation of the tip. And it explains how the plan is consistent with the Metropolitan Transportation Plan and other state and local plans. Chapter 3 is our financial plan, and it begins with a description of all the funding sources that are available, including Federal Highway Administration, Federal Transit Administration, state and local sources. It's followed by revenue assumptions and the revenue projections by fund. The general guidelines for the use of transportation funding is included in a matrix here. And then the last part of the chapter addresses the adequate maintenance and operations of the existing system. The financial constraint is actually later in chapter 7. Chapter 4 is the performance-based planning chapter, and it introduces performance-based planning and how the federal performance measures and their targets. And it describes how the projects in the tip will help achieve the performance targets, linking investment priorities to those targets. Chapter 5 is kind of it describes the process that we used to develop the tip, and it goes through and explains how we went through soliciting, prioritizing, and recommending projects for funding using the funds that SCATS actually has discretion. And this, again, the appendices include a lot more of the specific details there. Then we get into what you guys think of as the meat of the tip, which is the tip project listing. I'm not going to list all the projects, but we actually had and included in your packets the brochure that has where all the projects are and what they are. These include ODOT projects, so it includes all the arts projects and any of the new projects that came through ODOT, as well as any of the projects that are funded through SCATS funds. So this is all the projects. There's also the transit projects that are not mappable. They're there as well, and any of the studies and regional activities. The actual document itself was online, and you're looking at it here because that's 190 pages. We wanted to save trees. Chapter 7 is the demonstration of fiscal constraint. This is where we summarize the anticipated revenue and the expenditures by year and fund type, and make sure that we have enough money to actually fund the projects that we are programming. And in this chapter is also the SAMHSA statement of financial capacity that is required. Chapter 8 is the tip modification procedures. This is the process that you've seen before, the tip amendment matrix. What's a full amendment? What's a tip adjustment? What is an administrative modification? And we also included the new flow chart that was presented in September. Chapter 9 is the analysis of projects. It includes environmental justice analysis, consultation, AQCD, And in chapter 10 is our public outreach and participation. And this, we've only included what the public outreach was done prior to now. This will be updated after the TIP is adopted to include any of the public review and comments that are received during our public outreach. Chapter 11 will include the resolutions adopting the AQC and the TIP once they are actually approved. And then we have the appendices, the STATS committee membership, staff, the TIP development schedule, application materials, then the project prioritization process that we use, and then a summary of all the outreach and public involvement. And again, that will be updated after completed. And then of course, a lovely little acronym and abbreviation page. So this, we'll be doing some public outreach. This brochure is a nice handy little thing to pass out instead of the whole document. It's really what most people are interested in is what projects are going to be done. So we have our portal, what you call the GIS, our information hub. That's where all this stuff will just kind of, you can go there and learn information about what it is, what is the MPO, things like that. And in the short range plan, the long range plan, and you'll be able to find information about both the documents here. We'll have the import person open house tentatively right now scheduled for Tuesday, April 11th. We will be having an online open house through the web portal here. And then of course the public hearing again in May.